Today, I would like to present the 2023 Claire and Ralph Landau Student Paper Prize. The prize is for the best student-written SIEPR working paper and is a tribute to the Landaus for their countless contributions to SIEPR and to Stanford's economics department. The range of eligible topics is as broad as Ralph Landau's interests were in economics. Papers can deal with any issue involving the formulation or evaluation of economic policy broadly defined. And this year's prize is awarded to Agathe Pernoud for her paper, How Competition Shapes Information in Auctions. Congratulations, Agathe, on this award.
Thank you.
So yeah, welcome, and we're excited to connect with you here today. And maybe can you just, before we get into the details of your research, can you share a bit about your personal experience, sort of what drew you to economics and where you're headed after you wrapping up at Stanford this summer?
Yeah, of course. So I grew up in France. I did most of my pre-doctoral studies in Paris. And I'd say I have a somewhat unusual background for a theorist because before starting the PhD, I actually didn't do any math or engineering, which is what most theorists do. But I actually was majoring in the social sciences in Paris. So I was really interested in understanding human behavior and social issues, but I really loved math as well. And so econ was like a perfect combo between the beauty of mathematical modeling and answering questions related to social problems. And when I joined Stanford, I decided to keep working on economic theory. And I just graduated from Stanford, and now I'm heading to Chicago to join the University of Chicago as first a postdoctoral researcher and then an assistant professor in the business school.
Wonderful. So, well, congratulations on that. University of Chicago is, maybe I'm biased. That was my first job coming out of graduate school. So I think it's a terrific place, but I think it's pretty uncontroversial among economists that it's a really excellent place to start your career.
Thanks.
And so congratulations on that, and glad that we could be supportive to you in this as you launch. But I see from your website, you've produced many papers during your time here at Stanford, but today we're recognizing your paper, How Competition Shapes Information in Auctions. And perhaps you can just summarize at a high level, how this research, how this paper or your agenda more broadly defined, what its implications are for economic policy.
Yeah, of course. So the goal of this paper in particular is to understand how the design of markets, and in particular of auctions, affects the learning incentives of auction participants and how that feeds back into the performance of the auction. And so really it's trying to understand how a regulator or market designer should be taking into account the learning incentives of participants when designing their market. So there are real policy implications there. And auctions are very common nowadays. They're used to sell many goods, for instance, procurement contracts and spectrum licenses. And many of these goods are actually quite complex for bidders to assess. So before bidding, bidders have to invest quite a lot of time and resources learning about the goods. And then the key idea in my paper is that if you have to make such an investment before bidding, then you don't want to make it if you have very little chance of winning the auction. So if you think you're going to lose the auction, there's really no point in you spending a lot of time trying to figure out how much you value a particular spectrum license, for instance. And so if you then have an incentive to learn about the competition you will face in the auction, so to assess your likelihood of winning the auction and how much you should invest in spending time taking this auction seriously. And so that affects how well the auction performs and how you should be even designing the auction to address this issue.
Wonderful. Thanks for that background. And one of the things we take great pride in at SIEPR is our faculty, of course, along with our students as well. And I understand that in working on your research during your time in graduate school, that you worked with some SIEPR faculty, for example, Matt Jackson. Maybe you can just talk a little bit about your advisors and how they helped you during the process, because we love it when our faculty help people like you realize their potential.
Oh yes, of course. So I owe a lot to all of my advisors, in particular to Matt Jackson, who's my principal advisor. So I was very lucky so Stanford has the economics department has this great program in that during the second year of the PhD, they match you to a professor to RA for, and I was very lucky to be matched to Matt Jackson. It was a bit of a random outcome, but I was very happy about it, and he was great. And together we started working on several projects on systemic risk in financial networks. And by working on these projects with him, I really learned what it is to do research in economics. He always values focusing on very important economic questions and always having an eye on how theory or theoretical results can shed light on how we should be designing policy, and in particular here in financial markets, and how we should be regulating banks to reduce systemic risk. And so he's always really been very supportive and pushed me to be very ambitious in my choice of topics for my research, and always focusing on problems that are economically, practically relevant and important.
Terrific. And fun fact about Matt Jackson, he's also an incredible biker. As I have learned on the weekends going with him, he leaves me in the dust usually, or he's nice to me going up the hills, but he's very impressive. So he's terrific. So that's wonderful to hear. So finally, I'll just wrap up with just one final question for you, Agathe, and that is that economic theory can clearly be incredibly helpful to private firms, to policymakers, and to many others. And since we are here at SIEPR today, Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research, maybe can you discuss a bit the area or areas of economic theory that you think might in the future contribute most to important areas of economic policy?
Sure. I'm not sure I want to take a stand on which ones are most useful for economic policy, but I'm very happy to talk about some that I think are very important, if not the most important ones. So actually the two main areas of research I focus on, which are market design and financial networks, are, I think, very relevant for economic policy because they're very applied. They focus on very practical economic problems. The first one, how we should be designing markets and marketplaces, and the other one, how should we take into account the network's effects in the financial system and the risks they induce at the systemic level. And in both of these research agendas, both of these areas, the literature has really tried to highlight how the regulator can intervene to either design marketplaces in a better way so that goods are allocated more efficiently, more fairly. And similarly in financial networks, how we can intervene to regulate banks so as to manage or at least restrict the amount of risk that whatever connections financial institutions have between them can generate. So I think both of these areas are very, very relevant for policymaking. That's actually what drew me to them in the first place. I really want to focus on economic problems that are relevant for policymaking. That's the part of economics that I'm really excited about. And actually, a lot of people who work on market design or financial networks talk regularly to policymakers, and that's something I'm very excited about, and I really want to do in the future as well.
Well, thank you so much, Agathe, for making time for this conversation today. And congratulations on all of your success during your time at Stanford. We're so proud of all that you've accomplished, and are really excited to see what lies ahead for you as you head off to the Windy City. And we hope that you'll remember Stanford economics and SIEPR as you accomplish lots of great things in the future. And feel free to reach back out to us to come back to visit. And I won't be surprised if those visits tend to happen more in January, February, or March, having lived through many Chicago winters. But it is.
I do like a real winter, though. But yeah.
Yeah, it is a real winter. But in any case, congratulations again, and and for those of you who are watching, thanks for your engagement with SIEPR and support of SIEPR, and we'll look forward to connecting with you more in the months ahead.